This is again then, and it's 2026. So let's start fresh. It was a weird year of 2025. It certainly has started weird too. But I am going to talk about Curse of Regal, which is the latest DLC, an expansion. The reason why it took this long is because I had to recreate a whole new group. I went from the level locked high end group that I was using in order to playtest it to more of an adaptive. The problem with adaptive, of course, is that you can't really have a large mercenary group. Well, you can, but the problem is that sometimes the map and the constraints on the map makes it so you can't have all your unit. They end up in reserve, some of them. And also, it just gets jam-packed with enemies. Because the way the game adapts to your higher level is by increasing the level on their guys, but also increasing how many they are. So there could be 2-3 times as many of them as there are of your guys, and then everything gets just strewn all over the battle map. Since this is not a system where one start on one side, the other one on the other side, they're just jumbled up together. It gets chaotic and annoying because some of your most vulnerable units will then end up in the front line, whereas your best units that I'm way in the back line. It's pretty silly. I really honestly wish they could just set you up on one side against the other, like most other games. Different in, of course, an ambush situation, then it can get a little bit jumbled up, but that's why I don't really play adapted that much. You can't really have a good large group the same way you can on level locked, and then you have that situation. So I spend 3 weeks just building up a new high-end group just to be able to do the DLC. As you can see, but first I wanted to talk about a little bit of functionality of how the game works, the DLC with the new mechanisms, and a little bit more about the Thaumaturge, why that one is pretty cool. Some of the worst features, such as werewolves, not because werewolves are necessarily bad, but just because the werewolf packs that you fight are incredibly tedious. And I will explain why. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to showcase all the different new items. The only thing you won't see is the tomb itself. I will show you what you get from the tomb, but I'm not going to showcase the tomb. There's going to be most of the fights, the story, missions, and the only real pack fight that you're going to see is the one I'm going to showcase here first before I get into details on the actual DLC. And that's because, again, they are pretty tedious, and watching one pack fight after another is not necessarily fun. There is a reason why you should, though. And that's because from the werewolves you get 2 ingredients for your new a laboratory bench that you can use and unlock new features with. And the rest you get actually from inside a forest, which is the shiny mushrooms and the worms. So 4 ingredients. There's 2 different things that you unlock. One is the more advanced, those require more ingredients. And then you have the more simple unlockables, which only requires 2 ingredients. So that's why you need to do it. And then it's just a question of going through the motions. But there we are. So let's go ahead and first check out some of the bits and pieces with this new DLC. Okay, so here we are. This is in the Regal County. This is the main city. That's where you're also going to have your trading post. And I just wanted to showcase a few things first with the lycanthrope. Some of the ferocious beast. That's from the Briga one. When I made a video about Briga, there was speculating in what you could capture out in the wild. And it turns out you can capture stuff called a ferocious beast. They're a little bit different from the normal wolves and whatnot. And I think mainly they're a little bit better stats, but primarily they also have 2 equipment slots instead of 1. So you can have a potential 3 if you upgrade a skill that gives them an additional equipment slot. And the ferocious Ferocious Beast seems to be pretty much all of the different groups, except Sabretooth. When I did the Skelmer one, I couldn't really find any sort of hunting things to find. So I don't know if there's an actual Sabretooth that's like that. I'm not saying there isn't. I just couldn't find one. But as far as for the other ones, I have. So let's take a little look here. First and primarily, just check out the new, I want to say class, because any of them can become a lycanthrope. You can switch over at any time. You might not be able to do the main attack that way, but you will be able to switch over. So this one is one that you can actually find, and you will see that when I play the actual entire quest line. So there's one case where you can pick this guy up. He's a fighter, and here's his lycanthrope stuff. So you can do all the fighter stuff, switch over to your lycanthrope stuff, and you might not have the main attack because you used it on your fighter, but you will have the secondary attacks that you can do. So there we go. Let's upgrade that one. So here we go. I would say that a lycanthrope itself is more of a animal type, in that you will find a lot of the different skills is a mix and match of different other type of animals. It's generally just one attack with maybe one backup attack in this case. You don't really have any equipment except for the belt and the backpack. Of course, if you're playing as a fighter, you're going to have all the different equipment for that. So those are the kind of main differences. The other one is that in order to unlock different skills and sets, you use what the field laboratory. You're going to get that fairly early on, as you will see. And then most of the stuff that you unlock in it is improvement of either the lantern or some other features. You will also receive mutations. These mutations are additional improvements of your lycanthropes. So you can't just do it on any animal or anyone. It has to be a lycanthrope first. You can infect anyone to become one too, if you absolutely want to. But that's pretty much it. So the advanced ones requires the 4 different ingredients, as I mentioned. The basic ones only need 2. And I have unlocked all, as you can see. Some of them is just improvement and upgrades of the field laboratory. This one, field laboratory, will provide you with 2 of these chemicals if you have an assigned guy. So it's very similar to any of the other equipment, is that if you assign a guy to them, something happens, right? So once you have upgraded everything, I'm sure you could put it away unless you want those 2 additional chemicals every single time. The useful part with this particular unit, other than getting a small set of chemicals on the rest, is that you have those mutations that you can create. You are going to have to need a number of different chemicals. So you do this, of course, over at the apothecary. So you can't just do it in your own field laboratory. That would be nice. But if you go in here, there's a whole section for those towards the end. So that would be these things that you can do. You have, of course, also a cure. That's you have a minor one that removes it before it becomes a permanent lycanthropy. Like you're infected, so you can remove the infection. But once you are fully a lycanthrope, you need the remedy itself in order to get rid of it, if you want to. There are some negative implications being one. They haven't really built in a perfect moral system for it, but it seems like at some cases people are a little bit leery about you walking around like a hairy beast. Not fully though. I mean, there's many interactions where no one seems to care. The fact that you're walking around with a guy with 1,000 teeth and can tear you apart with one hit. They seem okay with that, but some interactions seems to indicate that that's not cool. But here are all the different ones that you can upgrade. And as far as I can say, I probably upgraded all of them on this guy. So one of them acts like an upgrade, like you would get that manual for upgrading your own skill. So there's one that you can make that upgrades these two. So that's the main one. This one is one of the last one you unlock, which is pretty much just a self heal, which is pretty cool. And as you see, that's from wolves. You can have that as a skill on wolves. That one is a starving bite, so that's your secondary attack. You get blood charges for that can heal yourself and do other things. And this one is your mighty roar. It's a huge area that it covers, and that adds a relentless and fury. So that's pretty good. And then, of course, I have a bunch of other ones that just helps a little bit. And you will notice that a lot of these are very close to what something you can find on the animals. And a lot of rage. It is not bad. It's just nothing special. I'm sure you can build a much better class of fighters just based on its equipment and different skills compared to what you can do with this one. They are far more annoying as an opponent in a pack than you having this one to use it. I have noticed that it's a couple of attacks. You don't have this special equipment for it. It's not like you can add any additional elements to and your claws, right? So in that respect, it would be interesting if they could have some kind of equipment type for it, meaning that you could upgrade your claws to have some of that stuff that you put on your weapons. Because without that, this is just more like an animal attack. And speaking of animals, since you mentioned that, from the hunt and the brig update, you have now ferocious beasts, and you've probably seen them too. But I'm just going through that here. So the big thing is that you have 2 equipment slots with it. There's no much difference as far as the skills that I have noticed. They're pretty much similar to what you normally would have. You could do a 3rd equipment slot. I don't know if that would actually be very useful because you can't double up on, say, 2 saddlebags, right? So there's a built-in limitation. That's why I don't necessarily think, and I haven't really experimented with it, that you can just do 2 collars. That would be kind of goofy, but whatever. And I don't know of any other equipment that would be suitable. Now, I do know you have the one where it adds some stealth that you can set up on one of your guys. Maybe that would be the 3rd equipment, but it doesn't really leave a lot of variation for you. So I didn't see a purpose having 3 equipment slot per se. I rather have a skill in this case like this one, where you just end up next to one of your allies, you get additional valor, because you will blow through valor if you build up your Thaumaturge to be the kind of machine it can be. This one is Cannoneer, upgradable. This one is my Ferocious Bear. Again, it very similar. It just have the 2 equipment slot. It looks pretty beat up and cruel. So it's a cool skin to it. I also noticed that this one routinely get the double hit. And now it has that collar, the juggler's collar, that also gives it 2 normal attacks. So that's pretty decent. And then we have Ferocious Wolf. As I mentioned when I started this video, is that you have to run with a slightly smaller group on adaptive, because otherwise you get just overflown. The entire map is just full of enemies. Normally I would run with 3 wolves because I like the pack skill. It increases their crit with 30 or with 50. So you can have a really high crit to start out when you're running with a pack of 3 wolves. But again, that also causes some issues with the size of the enemies that you have to fight. So in this case, I only have 1 of them. The rest is in my fief in the stable, or actually in my tavern as bouncers. That's right. I have a pig, I have a bear, and I have a wolf as bouncer. And yeah, they still love the place. And color loyalty. Okay, that one just adds more valor, which is always good. And then we have the plague rat. I don't think I ever found anything similar like this as a ferocious beast. I don't think there's an encounter that you can find out in the wild that necessarily have it. I know you have the blind one mice and you have the plague rats, mole rats, sorry. But I don't think those are encounters that you find anywhere. So that's why you probably can't find anything like a ferocious one of this. You do have a ferocious mosquito, though. That one is called a tire mosquito. So that one exists when you go to Luthern, which I thought was kind of cool. I have not seen any indication of any other kind of bear like the white bear or the black wolves. So this is pretty much the only ferocious wolf that I have seen. And the same thing, there is no creepers and those snow jetties or those aquamen that, as far as I can tell, are ferocious. These are all animals only, as far as I can tell. And then, of course, we have our new addition. So when you go down to the pirate area, you can actually find a Saurian. I have not renamed this guy yet, but again, it remains the same. They have a number of skills similar to the other one, and then, of course, 2 of the equipment slots. But it looks different than the normal ones. They're bigger in average to ferocious beasts, and there's a reason why. I do believe they come with a little bit better stats too. Now, do note that I have cheated both influence and I have crowns. At some point, I even have no carrying capacity. And the reason is because I wanted to get these guys up as first running. And as you know, when you start a new team, there's a lot of things that goes into just scrounging for money in order to afford equipment and all that. And I just wanted to get to a point where I could do this DLC with a high-end group as quickly as possible. So, yes, this is not a normal amount of influence. There's a way you can gain it, but that's over time. And I only been playing this team for about 3 weeks. And that, of course, that. Now, I wanted to also mention the Thaumaturge. So we're going to take a look real quick at the different items that you can find here. We can do that right now because you might have already played it, but you still might not have all the items from it. And that's what you want to get out of this. So here's the one sensor. There's 2. One you're going to find fairly early on. And this sensor is from the tomb, if I believe that correct. And each sensor, if you played around with Thaumaturge, there's a number of different sensors that have different aspects. Most of them, in my opinion, are not as good. You have, for example, I do believe it is Inquisitor that adds fever, and that's pretty much all it does. So part of your purge is just, yes, makes everyone get fever, right? And I don't think that's a very good setup because Purge is the big thing, the main attack that this guy do. And all that kind of stat damage always happens after it moves and then finish the turn. Then it gets hit by the poison and bleeding and all that. And by then they're probably gone anyway. Because you want to finish off most battles within 1 turn, and especially when you do adaptive, since otherwise to get reinforcements. And I have noticed that dealing a lot with stat damage, especially in scenarios like that, is kind of pointless. And that's why I prefer to have sensors that just outright do a lot of damage. So how they work is like any weapon. You can add, like in this case, briny and explosive. So when it do the purge, there's an AoE around it, like you will see. And that damage then get hit with whatever that particular one do. So in this case, this ammonia fumes. Anyone that's close by that your ally get rage, you get rage. So the more things you can do with it, you just stack more rage on top of your unit. And in this case, it has 130 in damage for all of them in the area. And of course, you can crit. And then on top of that, depending on how you set up these things, there's this explosive. So there's a chance for it to spread to others. And then, of course, I have Briny because if I make them bleed, they take additional damage. And I have this called an anticoagulant weapon. You use that, then all the things that you do first adds bleed to them. And in this case, you have this free explosive concoction. It's a small amount of damage, but if you first make them bleed, that happens. Now, I am trying out this one on it, the Mixologist, because I want to then do additional stat damage stuff on them. Okay. There are a couple of stamps that you could put on your hat. In this case, I only have this one for anticoagulant, but you can use the one that adds 25% more damage if they have poison, for example. So you do this one, they get a number of different things, including poison, and together with brining and that stamp for poison, you would just stack up a lot more additional damage. However, this one is a little bit broken. Pathogenic concoction is weird. It works actually more like a ranged weapon, not a grenade. So normally with a grenade, when you throw it, it just lands wherever you points to it, right? And then it explodes in an AoE around it. This one works more like you're throwing a dagger. Because if there's anything in between the one that you're aiming to, then it's going to hit that one instead. So think about it. When you're either shooting or you're throwing a dagger in this game, if you have a guy in front of the guy that you're attacking at, there's a chance you will hit the guy in front of him. Okay, either that's your dude or someone else enemy. And what happens if that is the case? It just hits that one and nothing happens. The stat damage part does not go off. The one you're aiming to for it, and it has to be aimed at someone. You can't, that's why it's so weird. It's not like a grenade where you throw it and it just hits everything within the AoE. You have to aim it on someone for that to be hit, and then everything else around it gets hit. Okay? But again, it acts like a ranged, so there's a bug in there that if it hits anyone in front of it, that's not the main target that you're aiming for, it says poof, nothing happens, and that's it. So I hope they're going to fix that, because that is definitely a bug. That would be a completely waste of feature if you are going to waste it on just being hit by something else. And then, of course, I have Wrath, because if you are up and close and engaged, you can still use Wrath, and it do a pretty decent amount of damage because it is based on the stats of your item. So this one is pretty good, called Immunia Fumes. You can build up Rage a lot, especially if they have the Brave skill, and I'm going to showcase that. You're going to see this one is pretty beastly when it comes to that. Then I have this one. This one has Heal, because Heal is actually a pretty decent secondary. The other one has the Mixologist, right? Stat damage stuff. Heal is a good spot heal. You can heal up to 2, and as you can see, it removes all the debuffs too. So it's a pretty decent high-end heal that can affect 2, and then also remove all of those stat damages that really hurts. I prefer this one, but the other one, once they fix it, can actually be pretty decent. I don't use much of the other ones because they're so situational. If you look on the coordinator, that is giving you an opportunity to attack on anyone that's under. So they have to be engaged like all other stuff. And then it's a small AoE that can affect maybe at the most 2, if that's the situation. And then they do an opportunity attack. That's not cool. That's not very, very good. Now, it guarantees a critical hit for all units in the area. I get that. But it's such a small chance that you will ever be in a situation where you can use it effectively, because you probably want to use your Thaumaturge as early as possible to use those AoE effects and knock out as many of the enemies as possible. As opposed to if you use a ranger with his smoke screen, you tend to use the ranger like once you have a bunch of units engaged, so you can attack the enemy in the back, and then use the smoke grenade to disperse them and then get an opportunity to attack that way. And plus the AoE of the Ranger smoke screen, in my opinion, is bigger. It just makes more sense to invest in that setup instead of using the coordinator. This one I haven't used, to be honest, but it seems like it wouldn't really help me that much. It has the frenzied power, and sure, that's of increase of damage. I get rally. I just don't see this one being very useful as far as an additional attack. I really like either a heal because it's so useful, and I really want to be able to get the other one to work because it works in synergy with stamps and other features that you put on your main sensor, such as extra bleeding damage, poison, etc. And of course, I haven't had a chance to play around with this one yet. I might, because I am curious about the smoke zone. But the whole extended effect for 1 more meter, I don't know. Obviously, I want to play around with it and experiment in order to see if that works for me. Because there's a lot of times when you're theory crafting in your mind and you go like, well, that looks pretty boring. And then it turns out being good. Like this one, the bravery skill. And I only use bravery skill on a few because you can only use 1 bravery skill each round. There are a couple of really good ones and a couple of really crappy ones. And it's very unlikely you're going to ever have a mash that just run forever. Then you're doing something wrong. It can happen, but most of the time it's over after 1 or 2 at the max, right? So having a bunch of braver skills on every single unit doesn't make sense. I have it on the Archer because that one is really good. That's a ranged AoE that can cover a huge area. I have it on the Pugilist because that one is just smattering good. That's 10 punches. And if you have built up your unit, for example, with the stamp on the helmet, that adds a rage every time, or a fury, I think it is, every time that you punch someone that you're engaged with, that just builds up so quickly that the damage just escalates, right? So those are 2 great units to have it on. And also this one. This, oh boy, it becomes very nasty very quickly. To explain it the best way, when you use a braver skill, especially on this one. So when you use this braver skill, every other skill that you use automatically causing it to purge. And purge is probably the most important feature of these. When purge happens is that it does its main thing that you get inhalation for. So if you look, for example, at this one, you can inhale twice, right? You have the first inhalation, then a second inhalation that usually costs some valor points. And what happened then, it goes off in an AoE around it, and it do a bunch of damage. In this case, with the ammonia fumes, that's 130 in that AoE area, plus whatever else you put on it. And then if you look at the actual inhalation, the inhalation itself can add things to it. So that is the main thing. Like an inhalation that adds rage, and a purge adds damage, right? If you look at this one, that happens to be the second one, that probably the first one, Perseverance. So when you do an inhalation here, it adds health to anyone within it. So an ally within 3 meters that gets support, and then gain support for each ally in the area, then deals 72 damage to enemies in the area, plus 30% for each application of support. So again, this one works a little bit different. It has a healing feature. The other one has a rage feature. But both of them do damage. This is 72 plus 30% for all applications of support. The other one is just straight 130 and then adds rage that can stack. So that all sounds good. In general, you only purge once. There is a skill that you can get that allows you to purge for 3 valor points over and over. This one. So regular cleaning, that means you can just keep on purging, but it's going to cost all your valor if you want to do that. Because you're first going to have to inhalate, and that costs more and more and more, and then I pay for the purge in that case. However, with the bravery skill, that is pretty awesome. First and foremost, when you use the bravery skill, you get what's called delirium. It automatically inhalate for max. Now with this bravery skill, it works a little bit like this. As soon as you hit the bravery skill, it would automatically inhalate for 2, so max. And then for every skill that you use, it will do a purge right afterwards. So if you're looking at this guy, he has that is a skill, 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 and that is a purge. So you can obviously use the purge. That means that for every time you use any of those skills, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, it purges. That's a lot of purging, and that's a lot of damage. Why can you use it with all the skills? I don't know. That's just built that way, and maybe they will change that. But it is pretty phenomenal for bravery skill. I really wish that bravery skills were that good. Most of them are kind of not that good. But this one makes this unit pretty beastly. So if you have built it up good, you have all those possibilities of using, not that's it, inhalate. And since the bravery itself inhalates automatically after every purge, maximizing it, the purge is always going to be as beastly as possible. And then every time you get more rage. So as the rage builds up, you will see that the damage also increases for every purge. It's pretty good. So that one setup, especially with the bravery skill and a decent sensor, makes this one pretty good. On its own, however, like in this case, they're pretty good too. You build it right, you have the right features for it, it can be a great way of getting rid of trash mobs. So let's stop talking theory crafting here. And let's go ahead and increase his. Oh, crit. Perfect. I like crits. So. Oh man, I unlocked this one too. So he's level 15. Ta-ta! I am level 15. I have to go talk to some dude, I guess. But yeah. Let's go ahead and find ourselves a mob and showcase the lantern a little bit. And then after that, let's go ahead and show you what the whole quest line is about and how that works. Looks like we are going to have to find ourselves a mob, but that seems to be just wolves. Not exactly what I want to fight, but we certainly can. Here we go. Wolves. There we go. So that's 27 and 8. That's way more than I have. So that's the problem. Having a large group also means a lot of units to fight. And that means they're all over the place and all different fronts, and it gets just annoying. And here you see the lantern, and then up in the room, here in the corner, should be your mental health too. So those are two new factors when it comes to this. Who are attacking? That one and that one. Perfect. So they're about the same. Should we start here then? So we're going to find our guy. Mixologist. And we want to start here. Okay. I don't care about the other ones. These ones we can break. So I hope we're going to hit the break point quicker than they can actually put some stuff out. That's good. Where's the other one? Okay, perfect. He's actually close to the other large group, so we can break them faster. So let's start here. So we want to start with the bravery. right there. Want to move up? There you go. Perfect. And that's one of them. And if we use this one now, remember, that's just me adding bleeding to my lantern. And right away it purges. That is so brutal. And then we want to move up a little bit. And we are going to use that one. Again, I want to hit this one. If I would aim to that one and it hits that, then it doesn't go off. Let's see if it does that. Yeah, it did. Perfect. So now it went off, and they get all this stat damage that's part of it. Perfect. And we are going to move over here. We're going to use that one. And right away it purges, and as you can see, the damage just gets higher and higher and higher. Should I? Nah, don't worry about that one. I'm going to move up here. I unfortunately got myself. So that's going to hurt once those stat damage hits. And I'm just going to use this one. Aim. Ah, that is just so cruel. Now, theoretically, if I could reach that guy, I can always walk down here, maybe do a run to him, or maybe even do a wrath and destroy him that way. But I would just be burning valor. Can I get down there? No, I'm done. So I eliminate the whole group there with all those purges. If you have a decent amount of walk speed, and you can get things like an inspiration. There are inspiration skills that doubles your movement. There are a number of other things that can increase that other than just stat, which is really good. Now I'm going to unfortunately have to take a hit. Yeah, look at all that stat damage. So I'm going to have to heal that guy. That is for sure. But there you get an idea just how brutal this one can be. Now, let's check out a normal setup. So this would be your normal one, right? This one doesn't have bravery. You can only use bravery once a round, so not so worried about that. So in this case, I would just do this. And I can't really move around a lot here. So I want to just make them bleed, okay? Because I do have briny on that one too. So I want to do that extra bleed damage. So there we go. Now they're bleeding. And then we do a little bit of an inhalation. That spends a little bit of valor point. And now we're going to do this. Now with this one, you add support and rally to all your units. So they're not going to get hit by anything nasty. What they get instead is healing. Like support. Yeah, look at that. And because I have explosive too, that can actually translate into attacking more than one unit. Now, I could go over... no, none of them are damaged enough, so I can use that. But let's see what I can do here. Just to showcase that. If you have the heal, then you can use that on these. And they get healing, right? If you then add more inhalation, but as you see, it's really expensive. So you want to use the heal first. It also gets protection from it. Okay, so we're done with that. And that was the normal, and that was the more advanced with the bravery, and then more of the normal. And as you can see, it can do a lot of damage to trash mobs. So these are the most annoying ones. Here, first of all, they have this dash attack. That is a wild dash, very similar to what boars and pigs do. They can run straight through you. So you don't really have a front line. Even if you engage and lock something down, they can just dash away from you. Because that's what pigs and boars can do. And then it can chomp you pretty good. Now, that seems to be armor breaking in the fact that most of the damage they do goes against your health. That means they can quickly overwhelm even the tankiest of dudes or half tanky dude, and you take a lot of stat damage. And since they can dash all through you and they have a tons of hit points, you don't always get the chance to knock them down completely. So they have a sliver of health, dash through, you do a lot of damage. And they can also heal themselves because, of course, they have something like Lick Thirst. So they get some health back from just biting you. That is what's painful with them. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that they don't have an immoral breakpoint. You have to kill every single one of them. I would be fine if they had just a dash. That's annoying and terrible enough. Because there will be chances where you can't beat down the one guy. And there are going to be 2 in a row, like in this case here, 2 in a row. So there's a chance that one of them are going to be able to break through and hurt you. And they go after your most vulnerable, and they can get trashed almost right away. But since there are no moral breakpoints, you have to kill every single one. You had to hunt them down. Now, luckily, they don't seem to have a reinforcement mechanism instead. That would be terrible if they also get reinforcement. But yeah, it's not fun. Every single pack is like that, and it just gets very nauseating after a while because you have to go through all this pack and just every single one. At least with most other encounters, you only have to break them. So as you saw what I did with the wolf pack, that was pretty simple. That one guy broke them all, pretty much. And then I used the other one to just break a few of them and they were gone. Okay? That is ideal with trash mobs. Now, boss fights, elites, and special encounters, that's a little bit different, and that's fine. But trash mobs are the most boring encounters because there's just plenty of them. Now, you happen to want to kill werewolves because you get ingredients from it. So let's do this again, and we'll see how well it goes. And you will notice they don't just go down very easily anymore. So we inhale the delirium, we got perfect whatever, and let's just do the same thing again. So 290, and they're still up and running. So what I can do now is use that one, and assess that off again. But now I'm getting twice as much crits because I also have a bunch of rage. Perfect. So that is the one we want to hit. I really don't want to stat damage myself. Unfortunately, that happens way too often. Purge area is that, so that will hit those two. So let's go ahead and see if we can just stat damage that one. Okay, he did. And I think I spared myself, so that's good. That's always bad when you don't. So I'm going to move up. And I am going to actually go like boogaloo with a taunt. And the that one goes off. And he is now hurt. And what I can do is walk up here and I can use my aim skill. And again, I set that one off, and as you see, now I'm at the point when I crit, they're just toast. Okay, now it gets a little bit more difficult because I moved all the way here. I had those two. Let's see if I can get that far. Nah, I can't. I'm done here. That's a waste of... Yeah, that's a waste. Let's not waste it. I can't. There's no point wasting Valor points for that. But yeah, I managed to get rid of 3 of the ones that were upcoming. And yeah, after the first round or so, then all that rage that stacked up did all of that damage. So right now at 10 rage, which is maxed out, I do believe. So that's 50% additional damage. Perfect delirium equals to 20% of the health at the end of each turn. That's me. I'm going to take a ton of damage now. And then, of course, Brave. As you can see, stackable, currently 80. That is a lot of damage. And that is why you saw it. I hit 1,000 before, so it's pretty cool. So he's done. He's gonna take his damage now, and because it didn't have all that stat damage, it didn't completely break him this time. And there you have it. So these are the most annoying one, those trash mobs. As you can see, it does eat a lot of valor when you start using that brave feature. And it can be very costly on just regular guys too, because of the fact that you end up having to use a bunch of the attacks on maybe the same guy if you don't have good crit chance. I build up crit chance on mine just to be able to crit as much as possible. And that is the trash mob. That's a little bit of the lantern feature, what you can expect from the laboratory, and the different mutations that you can unlock, and also the Thaumaturge and as far as the werewolf. So what do I like about this content before I showcase all the quests and where you find everything on the map? I like the DLC. It is fun. It's creepy to run around in the forest. Annoying trash mobs when it comes to the werewolves, but everything else is kind of cool. It gets real creepy when you start losing your mental health and you get more focused and narrow in the vision. All of those are kind of pretty cool. The only downside is that other than the Thaumaturge, which was free, that's a free part of this DLC. And other than, say, the werewolf, which is an addition that, of course, you can use in any other content, um, there's not much here to translate into any other DLC. For example, the mental health thing and the lantern are all features. And most of the stuff that you unlock in the laboratory either boost the lantern or burn rate of the oil and etc. So none of that is translatable over to any other content. And that truly is a downside. And because what that means is that you have built up a whole function, a whole thing that is for this DLC only. I would like for you to be able to use the lantern even in tombs. If you think about it. If you had the ability to do that in tombs, you now can use it pretty much anywhere else. And why not? Because it's a lantern. There would be a reason for you to get more oil. There would be a reason for you to go and get more of the material needed to make the oil, to revisit the area. After this, when you're done with the DLC and gotten all the legendary stuff, you're not going to be interested in any of it. That's just the plain truth of it. Because you will move on, you might have a lycanthrope, you might have a Thaumaturge and all that, and you move to the next area and the next DLC and whatnot. Had they made a little bit more purpose of the different materials that you can get or the different mechanics, that would actually translate into something better somewhere else. Same thing with the Scalmer. The Scalmer invasion feature doesn't exist in anything else. If you look at the Beleriand as far as the boats and pirate ships and all that, that's just there. You build yourself a ship, you do that stuff, and you dump the ship, and that's it. That's all you're going to see. The next DLC, you're going to move on to something else. I really wish they could have more forethought. Like they did, for example, the hunt mechanics from Brigga. You can find hunts everywhere. They all also translated Ferocious Beast into pretty much all the regions, which I think is cool. That means that when you go to a new region like Beleriand, you can find the lizard as a Ferocious Beast. If you go to Ludern, you can find the mosquitoes as a Ferocious Beast. They incorporated a feature of that one Brigga that also features in other regions. I think that's awesome. If you look at the Thief, sure, that's just in one area, but all those features are in that one area, so you can go there instead of going anywhere in order to make more weapons or upgrade your guy and whatnot. It's a bang full of stuff that's useful for everything that you do the rest of the game. But in this DLC, the lantern doesn't matter. Once you're done with that, that's a mechanic that's just not happening or useful anywhere else. And that's a shame because I want this to be built on and not just be a special area that you go to and do some features in and then move on to a whole new mechanic next time. If they made Lantern more useful in situations like, say, Tomb, then there's a reason for you to have the DLC outside this feature. Sure, you might like a Thaumaturge, but that one's free. You might like a Lycanthrope, but it's not that super special. Having nice elite lanterns or legendary lanterns are good, but the ones that you have and exist works just fine. So the only really special thing you get out of here is things that, one, the Lycanthrope that really isn't that super special, and one that you got for free, which is the Thaumaturge, which is really good. So judge it as you may, and as you see the quest line, it's an interesting romp, but just bear that in mind. You are not going to take a lot of pieces from this that is necessarily going to be super useful for later on. And again, that was true with Skelmar, but there you can at least get some cool armor and whatnot. And speaking of armor, let's showcase that the last point here before I move on. I've been talking a lot here about just this stuff. You can find in, is this the armor? No, that's a Skelmar armor. I was pretty sure yeah, this one. Okay. So you have what's called knight armor here. You have a lot of different ones. Pirates, you're going to usually find that over in the Beleriand. Skelmar armor, more like Nordic themed. You're going to find that over in that DLC. This one has the knight, which has very draconic kind of images. So if you're looking at the helmets, and I do believe I just taken out all those helmets here because of weight. Nope, we actually have one here. As you can see, it looks a little bit more of a, let's take a look on this guy here. So that's a pretty cool motif. A little bit of a dragon motif and on the stuff that you have. Not bad at all. I kind of like the look. And as far as the different features it adds, this one adds a little bit the will and crit, which is similar to a lot of other stuff. And here you can also find this one has some weakness feature on it. I put a different stamp on it. But yeah, pretty cool. So you have a whole new things that you can find here. That's a little bit of its own look in the case you're into what's special for this area. Let's check out the quests.